Well, good morning. We are grateful to be starting a little later this morning, but so much better lesson was given right here than you're going to get the next 30 minutes or so. A greater lesson than we often see anywhere. I've kind of lost Haley. Am I right, Haley? But I would just comment on a couple of things. The courage that it takes for each of us to admit that we can't do it all ourselves and that we need help. And to walk into a place of strangers, at least to my knowledge, a place of strangers, and to be so open and disclosing is really a potent lesson and a great encouragement for all of us who believe in the topic that we're talking about in this class and the place that we all want to go, and that's heaven. So I congratulate her on her courage, and I congratulate you on the way that you have responded to her and will continue to respond to her. It is a motivational and a loving and kind thing to do. And I hope that at this moment she feels that, one, she made the right decision, and two, with the right place, with people like each one of you. So we weren't going to be in a hurry to get through that process because it's really key to what's going on. What's going on also, though, is our desire to go to heaven one day. Is our desire to live in a place of perfection. How many of you have not read this book by Robert Alcorn? Just raise your hand if you've not read it. Okay. Because sometimes I feel like Tommy and I are just repeating what y'all have read during the previous week and everything. And so that's a good number of people who have not. I want to I'll reiterate this every class. What we're trying to do is a couple of things, and that is to encourage people to want to go to heaven, to be excited about the opportunity, and to realize our part in getting there. And to look forward to that judgment day, as all of us who have faith and who have hope believe. We're presenting some alternative ideas about what heaven may look like, as opposed to what many of us grew up being taught or that we have studied in the scriptures. We're just presenting ideas to cause us to think, not to convince you of one way or the other, to convince you that there's a new discovery of information about that principal place of heaven. Just to get you to think, what is my belief from my study of the scriptures that heaven is going to be like? And you know, if there's 100 people in this room, there's 100 different impressions of what heaven's going to be like, because each one of us has a different kind of need. So we're not selling any theory other than the theory of the scriptures. We're not selling anybody's idea of what heaven ought to be that we should collectively embrace, except that God is going to be there, and He's faithful to keep the promise to us that those of us who keep close to Him during our labor on this earth will join Him there for eternity. And there are just some things that we have to admit that we cannot comprehend. I can't comprehend the mighty power of God. I can't really comprehend eternity. I just can't get my arms around it. And if you can, I'd ask for your help. But there are just some things that we have to leave to our faith and to our belief from our study of the Scriptures that God has enlightened us on, given us a glimpse of, told us that He is faithful to take us there one day. So with that kind of setup, today we move into a new part of Alcorn's book that actually, it's divided up by sections, and we move into one, what will the resurrected earth be like? And we've talked about that already a lot. So we may be repeating a few things today, but what will the resurrected earth be like? And in this section, I think I see a little bit different slant of Robert Alcorn, Randy, I'm sorry. I went to high school with Robert Alcorn. You know, when you get old, those things come back to you really quickly. So, but one of the things that Randy Alcorn presents in this book is a little bit different slant than what has been taken before. At least I read it that way. And then even he's admitting that some of the ideas that he's putting forward are speculative in the scope of their existence. Not that they don't exist, but in the scope of their existence. And so I appreciate that point of honesty. He also, though, continues to take just a very quiet, soft shot at those of us who traditionally would have been Christo-Platonists in our beliefs. That is, that we believe in the spiritual side as opposed to the physical side of heaven, and that spirits will inhabit a spiritual heaven. And so he's consistent in that regard. You know, the thing that strikes me in his honesty, he does recognize that there's some scriptural basis for where he's going, but not to the depth that he's going. At least that's the way I'll read these 5 chapters that we're going to look at today. I've said before that once you make a decision in one direction or the other, every decision downstream from that is based on that initial decision. So to adopt a different philosophy or a different belief or a different description would mean that you'd have to go back and revisit that original description or decision and change your way of thinking. So he's very consistent in that he believes that the new earth will be this physical earth re-energized, renewed, resurrected. And he continues to believe that we will be resurrected individuals in our bodies, but without imperfections. And so he's consistent in that, and once he makes that decision, then what heaven looks like is all dependent on us occupying physical space. So let's kind of get in and look at a few of these things. Today is more questions that generally you would ask. You probably ask yourself, you ask a neighbor or something, what will this, what will that, what will it be? We're going to touch on some of those things. Will the new earth be a return to Eden? You know, several weeks ago, I suggested that heaven will be much like the Garden of Eden. That it'll be peaceful, it'll be joyful, it'll be breathtaking beauty, it'll be personal joy, there'll be satisfying relationships, just like there was when God created the heavens and the earth. And in the earth, He placed a garden. Alcorn believes that culture won't regress. Now, this morning, if you listen to Ryan's sermon, culture isn't necessarily a good thing. But be careful that we define culture here, as he does, that culture is a Christian culture, a belief in God, that culture will follow us into the land of Eden. Alcorn believes that just as God paid attention to the details of the home that He prepared for Adam and Eve, He's spending just as much time perfecting heaven for our occupancy as He did in that original plan, in His original plan. Eden was not just a garden. It was an entire land of natural wonders. If you follow the description, it wasn't a confined space. I don't know how large it was, but it was large. It had 4 rivers running beside it or through it to nourish it, to give it life. Alcorn believes that we'll get to the river part a little bit later. We today have never seen mankind as God intended us to be. Now, I read that and I thought, well, now that's an interesting statement, because I know some pretty good people. I'm looking at some really good people right now. But the perfection of mankind, none of us has ever seen with our own eyes. And we've never seen nature, this earth, this old earth, as we've described it. We've never seen it when it was in all of its beauty and all of its glory. So we have a lot to see. If the wrong side of eternity, if the earthly side, this side of eternity, looks so good to us sometimes, and we all are excited to visit national parks and places that we've never been before to look at the wonder of nature, it is glorious, but it's not perfect like God created. And people that we deal with, we may love and respect and cherish and seek out their opinion on a variety of things, but none of us are perfect. We've not seen mankind or nature as God intended for it to be. And if you look in Isaiah and Ezekiel, Isaiah particularly talks about this concept. If the wrong side of heaven looks as good as we think it does today, think of what viewing it from the right side is going to look at. How grand it's going to be to see a perfect individual, an individual with no flaws, and an individual that is the image of God as God created mankind. And then man tarnished that image. Nature as God intended, with its full simplicity, but its grandeur that he intended for us to see. In part of his description in this first section of the book, Alcorn refers to the new earth and refers to the onyx stones, which are mentioned in a couple of places, actually about 5 places in the scriptures. And he believes that, remember, the high priest had onyx stones on his chest. Alcorn believes that through some words of Isaiah, that those stones represent, even though on the ephod they had the names of the 12 tribes of Israel on them, that those represented God's promise of Eden as it originally existed, and the hope that we will return to Eden in eternity after the day of judgment. And in fact, one of the foundations of heaven that the physical earth is built on is decorated, at least, or made of onyx stone. And so there's a relationship through the Old Testament to the New Testament, to the symbolism that could be there. Because we'll see those stones, if Revelation is literal, as one of the 12 foundations. We won't trade earth's beauty for heaven, Alcorn believes, but we'll regain earth's beauty and gain an even deeper appreciation for what God has created and what he wants us to share in. It'll be deeper, it'll be richer, it'll be grander than anything that we could ever imagine. And imagination, I've mentioned several times, is key to understanding what we're talking about this quarter, to the extent that we can imagine these things. The new earth will be a representation, the perfection of the good of both God and man's creativity. And it'll be an expression that just screams out that God is present. And He's done all of this for our benefit. You know, when Jesus healed individuals in the New Testament, the act of healing was spoken about as creating a wholeness and healthiness that individuals who were healed were returned to perfection, similar to the perfection that we saw in the Garden of Eden. And that's the way the coming new earth will be. Will we miss the old earth? God's no more. Alcorn believes that God is no more done with the earth than He is done with us. If He's going to recreate us, if He's going to resurrect us into a new body, why would He put our new perfect bodies into an unresurrected world or into an unresurrected place? And so I can see how He sees the physical earth being refreshed and recreated to receive the presence of our resurrected bodies. Will we miss the old earth? I don't think so. I don't know how to explain that, because that gets into the aspects of relationships and things of that nature, and whether we will remember those things. And we've talked about those all during the quarter. And Alcorn believes that all those things will follow us through. Even the creations of man, the wisdom that God gave man to make things, cars and telescopes and physical structures and things of that nature, that culture, that Christian culture, will follow us through into the new heaven. So we won't miss those things, because we'll not only have them, but we will have them in perfection. And that is a significant piece of his story. He speaks often, and we have spoken often of the New Jerusalem. And in the Scriptures, the New Jerusalem, particularly in Hebrews and in Revelation and in Luke, the New Jerusalem is mentioned. It's portrayed as a walled city, absolutely secure because God is there to protect His people. It's perched on the peak of a hill. Its walls are so thick that it's impenetrable, and so high that no human can escape them. It's described both as a country and as a city. Now, I don't know if this is an actual reference to a physical place where God's going to preside like He did in the physical presence of the temple, the holy place. But Alcorn believes that it is physical. He believes that there will be a city. And taking the measurements given in Revelation, that city will be a city that is a 1,400-mile cube. And I won't go through all the math and everything, but 1,400-mile cube, north and south, east and west, is a pretty big place. And then he divides that down generously. If you subdivide it into floors and have a 12-foot ceiling, that you could house 600,000 floors in this New Jerusalem, where God is going to reside and rule. Well, 600,000 floors, 1,400 miles in each direction, is a lot of space. And Alcorn believes that because we are physically resurrected, that we'll occupy that space. We'll get to that more in just a minute. I don't know whether that calculation is true. I do know what is true is that there will be a place where God resides, and it will be ever present and everywhere that we are. In fact, some ways it's more confining to believe that that's going to be in the presence of a huge, monstrous building that he will create, but that's the way Revelation describes some of it. It's in some degree of detail. That's why your study needs to look at the scriptures and make a choice of what you think heaven is going to be like. I think what's really interesting here too in Alcorn's description of heaven is that in this 1,400-mile cube, 4 sides, that there are 12 gates, 3 on each of the 4 sides, and that the gates to the city of the New Jerusalem are always open, but they're guarded over by an angel. And that is descriptive in the book of Revelation, if you read it. But I think what's more important is the concept that these gates remain open at all times. And why is that? What's the relevance of that? Well, the relevance is that everyone has access to the New Jerusalem. Everyone has access to God's throne. It's not like it was in the Old Testament where only the high priest had access to God's presence. But everybody can come through the gates of the New Jerusalem and access the presence of God. Now, whether it's a physical gate or whether it's a spiritual gate really doesn't matter to me. The fact that I have immediate, unrestricted access to God, to praise Him, to even ask for petitions if it's necessary. I don't think I'll have any needs in heaven. That's my personal belief. I'm not saying it ought to be yours. I'm just saying I don't think I'll have needs in heaven, but I'll have the desire to praise God, and all I have to do is look up and be present to do that. Alcorn believes that we inhabit physical bodies in this physical city and outside this physical city, that people from lands around, that nations will be formed and governed by people of God in the new heaven. And that those individuals will have access to God's presence not only out there, but as they come to worship Him in the New Jerusalem. And so they'll have access through these gates. There's no reason to close the gates. Why were the gates closed in the cities of old? Well, it was to keep people out, wasn't it? It was to defend the city. It was to protect the people who were inside the walls of the city. It was the gathering place, if you will. It was the news place. It was the CNN of today. That's where people gathered, told stories. They made pledges to each other. They bought and sold things at the gates of the city. But at night, they were closed to protect the people that were within. It won't be that way in the New Jerusalem. We all will have access. He and I agree on that particular point, that we will be in God's presence continually. No one will have to wonder, and this is a big thing to me, big point for me. No one will have to wonder if they're being told the truth, since there will be no deceit. And just stop and think about that for a minute. Every word that is spoken to you in heaven will be absolute truth. There will be no disguise. There will be no double entendres. There will be no hidden meaning. There will be nothing except the straight truth. Now, some of us, at various aspects of our life, have made a living of interpreting what's behind the words that are said. I don't know that I should disclose this, but those of you who have known me for a while know that I was a registered lobbyist with the state legislature for a while. And no disrespect to our government or anything that I saw or participated in, but the fact is, we lobbyists spend a lot of our time deciphering what the words that were spoken really meant, and looking across the room and seeing if that individual was really going to keep their word, that they would support or not support the bill we were focused on. There won't be any of that in heaven. There won't be any of that in heaven. Now, I'm not putting down politicians or politics. I'm just telling you that in the world today, we all parse out every word that's spoken to us, even within our own families, within our neighborhoods, within the world in general, to see what the meaning behind those words really is. Well, in heaven, we won't have to have that liability because we know in God's presence every word that's spoken is truth, and we'll be true citizens, as Paul writes to the Philippians. Our citizenship is in heaven. Our presence today may be in the present earth, but our citizenship as Christians is already guaranteed in heaven, in eternity with God. I mentioned earlier that this New Jerusalem, as Alcorn describes it, and as it's described by John in the book of Revelation, that it has 12 layers of foundation. Most all the layers decorated with a precious stone. The onyx I've already mentioned, jasper being another one. But there'll be 12 gem-filled foundations. The point is that wherever we are in heaven with God, the foundation of heaven, the existence of heaven, the continuity of heaven, the continued existence is guaranteed by God. If it's a physical structure, it'll be so strong that no one can challenge it. Why would anybody want to challenge it? There's the absence of so many things in heaven. There was the absence of so many things in the Garden of Eden. The perfection we almost can't comprehend, the perfection of where we'll be. But we'll be in a place that is defensible, where God is caring for us and lifting us up, physical structure or spiritual structure, I believe. Even Abraham looked for that city whose architect and builder is God in Hebrews 11. He was looking for a place that's devoid of crime and pollution, distracting noise, fatalities, garbage, homelessness, all of those things that are challenges for us here in the present earth. They won't be there in heaven. Won't that be so rich and so good to know that God is taking care of us? We'll be filled with natural wonders. What will the great city be like? Well, you know, God made us to be a bit of explorers. All of us are a little curious, aren't we? You know, there's a lot of truth in that old saying that curiosity kills the cat. All of us are a little curious about a lot of things. We elevate that word curious to being explorers. We like to explore things, whether it's the physical beauty of this earth or explore His Word to see what our future can be if we'll be workers for Him. Heaven's capital city, the New Jerusalem, will be filled with visual magnificence. Alcorn believes it's physical, its structures, that it will have museums, that it will have buildings, etc., etc. And you know what? If he's 100% correct, I'm okay with that. That would make me happy. I'd be glad to see the richness of God's architecture. I'd be glad to see the richness of God's beauty in animals and in nature. That's okay. It's okay. It's a little bit different picture than I've grown up with, and that's okay too. Contrary to a lot of belief, I'm still capable of learning a few things. And so, you know, just think about it. The visual magnificence, whether it's spiritual or whether it's physical. The river of life flows from the throne of God, just like it did in the Garden of Eden. The river of life, the sustaining. Maybe that's what Adam and Eve drank so that they would live forever as God intended for them to do when He created the Garden of Eden. And the river was forbidden from them when they fell from grace with God, when they brought the curse upon the earth. But we'll have exposure to the river of life, whether that's actual a river or not, or whether it's being in the presence of God who gives life, that we can reach out and touch Him and be in His presence. Make your choice. The tree of life grows everywhere, and it heals us. Not heals us from the imperfections we have, because we won't have imperfections. But it heals us in our generosity and in our desire to praise God, in our desire to serve God in heaven, in our desire to be with Him and with each of you in heaven. What a glorious desire that will be. So whether it's figuratively or whether it's real, the river of life and the tree of life will be right there in heaven for us to partake of. Now you notice that I'm not mentioning that there will be a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I don't think, and Alcorn doesn't think, that we'll need that. We've already experienced that, hadn't we? Adam and Eve did away in some form. Well, maybe they didn't do away. Maybe they brought it more prominently into our lives, the knowledge of good and evil. But we won't need it in heaven because, why? There will be no evil in heaven. The knowledge that we have will be the knowledge of good, the knowledge of God. I like that thought. I like the thought that we can explore everything that God intended for us to be, and we can relish in it. A lot of us ask, will there be space and time? Well, Alcorn believes because we occupy physical bodies and because we occupy physical buildings, that there will have to be space for that. Hence his measurements of the New Jerusalem. But everybody doesn't live in the New Jerusalem. Everybody didn't live in the Garden of Eden. There were things outside the garden, around the garden, if you look. Around the Garden of Eden, if you read Genesis. Eden was created in space and time. Alcorn believes the new earth will have both space and time. You know, a God that can put 10,000 angels on the head of a pin, space doesn't really bother me. I don't know how much space I'll take up. It could be this much space, or it could be something more finite. But we'll be there in some form with God. Time was not the mark of the world's fallen state. Time didn't come into existence when God put a curse on the earth. Time was there when God created the earth. It's measured in days. Don't know if they were the 24-hour days that we have now, but God measured time during the creation of the world. Time is irrelevant in heaven. We can have time. I'm okay with that. I won't be eaten by time. I'll live with time because it matters no more. Alcorn believes that there is a misinterpretation of one of the scriptures that says when time will be no more, that it actually meant that Revelation 10:6 says time will be no longer. But the verse should really read, time will be no more delay. That is, we won't be waiting for something. We won't be waiting for the judgment day to come. We won't be waiting for whatever it is we wait for here on earth in time. Time may be present. God says that one day is like 1,000 years, and vice versa. So he doesn't deny the existence of time. It just doesn't matter anymore because nobody's going anywhere. except to the throne of God to give him praise. So, well, if you're curious, will there be space and time? Pick your choice. This section deals more with the speculative, as I said in the beginning, than any other part of his book, I think. We'll have no need to number our days, as Psalm 90 says, or to redeem our time, as Ephesians 5 says, because it just won't matter. You know, the Buddhists, if you want to draw a contrast, says that there is no resurrection. So time will be extinguished. You know, that's one belief, but we as Christians believe that time will go on forever because of the resurrection. I think one point that Alcorn makes is one worth thinking about, and that is about time, is that Satan has used this misinterpretation of Revelation 10 to say that time will be no more, to dehumanize heaven, to take something away from heaven, to make it not have significance in our lives, and that thereby causes us not to be as focused on going to heaven. It's cost us our desire. That's something to think about. Does Satan take away, does he create in us doubt about what heaven's going to be like as a way of taking away our anticipation of going to heaven? It's a good question to ponder. People still use the word ponder. I don't know. I ponder a lot of things. Don't ever come to a conclusion, but I ponder a lot. I ponder whether we'll have sun, moon, weather. Alcorn says yes. I know we're out of time. It'll be overshadowed with brightness, but he believes that there will be ways for God to show us sunrises and sunsets in the physical world that will exist in heaven. God will be all bright, but he'll show us the beauty as he once did in the Garden of Eden. There will be water, but it won't be destructive. God promises not to destroy the world by water again. Hence the rainbows. There'll be water. The river of life will be flowing from the throne of God and the throne of the Lamb through the city. And Alcorn believes because there will be a new physical earth, there'll be weather. But it won't be destructive. That's kind of a different kind of thought, isn't it? As we face storms this afternoon and this upcoming week, what do we think about the weather? Well, yesterday the rain was really nice. Today the sun is good, but tomorrow it may bring damage and harm and death to some people. It won't be that way in heaven. If there is water, physical water, then it gives us life. It sustains us because God created it for us. And remember, in heaven there will be animals. And where do most of the animals on the earth exist, according to Alcorn's interpretation? They exist in the ocean. Where are they going to live if there's no water in heaven? That's his point that he makes. I don't know. Some of you have told me, Roger, that there won't be any snakes in heaven. I can't tolerate that. Well, where did the snake come from in the Garden of Eden? I don't know. That's a side rabbit hole. Will we miss the old earth? Question we asked earlier. We'll have everything we need. I don't think we'll miss the old earth. As we get into these last few weeks, we'll present Alcorn's view of heaven. You study your own. He makes a point that going from the old earth to the new earth is like getting on an airplane with an economy class ticket and being upgraded to first class. How many of you have ever had that happen? I used to get on a flight from Memphis to Nashville quite regularly, long time ago when airfares were cheap and everything. And I knew that if I caught this 8 o'clock at night flight out of Memphis, I always either got points or I got upgraded to first class. I didn't think a lot about what was going on in economy class. I think that's a good analogy. The analogy is all the Christians are going to be in first class. We'll be with God. I don't know, folks. And I hate to keep saying this. All I want to do is, I don't hate saying this first part, the second part I do. All I want to do is go to heaven. And I want to see you there. And what happens after God tells me where I'm going, none of the rest of it really matters. It can be physical. There can be real rivers and lakes and oceans and everything, or there can just be the spiritual presence of God, our souls in perfect union with God. That's all I'm looking for. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.